Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Nice crowd. I feel like we're in the middle of Metland right here. But you know what? Over the years, I found no matter where I've been in the world, it's always Metland. There's always New York Met fans somewhere, and everybody wants to talk about 1969. I played 13 years, and for all intents and purposes, nobody ever talks about the other 12. It's really about 1969. I'm so glad you're here and interested in this book. This is my third book, and I always tell people that who want to listen that there are two teams in the history of baseball that resonate with fans years after they've won something. One of them, it'll be 100 years in 2 years, and that's the 27 Yankees. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and a whole wonderful cast of characters that were on the great Yankee team back in those days. And the 69 Mets. We're now 56 years, is it? 56 years, and people still...
That mic.
Use this one?
Yeah.
People still want to talk about 1969. It's still very vivid in their memory. I've had more people come up to me who weren't even born who know about that team from their parents or their grandparents. I've had 100,000 people tell me they were at the last game when we won the World Series in 1969. And I realized that the ballpark only held 53,000 people. So it doesn't make any difference. If they were there in spirit, it doesn't make any difference to me. The fact that they remember that team and want to talk about it. And it's, for me to be part of that team is very, very special. My life really changed on October 16th, 1969. I've done so many things, and some of you might know about some of them. You know, from being on Sesame Street, being on Ed Sullivan's show, being on Dick Cavett show, having a dog named after me, Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, there's so many things that I experienced, and more books, I don't know if you know this, but more books have been written about that team than any sports team in the history of this country, maybe the world, I don't know, but no other sports team has had so many books written about it. Maybe the New York Yankees as an organization has had a lot of books, or maybe more books, I doubt it, but no team has ever had as many books written about them as the New York Mets, the 1969 team. I've written 3, so I mean, I know that that I'm in that category with them, but this was a special time for me to, when I wanted to do another book, the last one some of you might have read was called After the Miracle. It was a kind of a 50-year anniversary of us winning the championship and the relationships that we had developed from being a bad team from the time they came into existence in 1962. And when I came over, my first year was 1968. Those relationships were stronger than ever 50 years later, because what we had accomplished, and I think this is really important, what separates us from the 1986 team that everybody knows about, which was an exciting, terrific ball club for the Mets. But the thing about that 86 team, they were expected to win, whereas the 1969 Mets were not expected to win. We were expected to lose another 100 games that year. And even though we had a new manager in Gil Hodges and a lot of new young players, nobody expected us to win. And in fact, we went into the season after having finished 9th, a half game out of last place in 1968. If you remember, that was one division, National League, and then 2 divisions we split in the National League East and the National League West in 1969. Nobody gave us a chance to do anything except somewhere come close to probably finishing last again. But all of a sudden, we came from nowhere and beat a terrific Atlanta team in the playoffs, and then beat a really great Baltimore Oriole team in the World Series. I don't know if anybody knows this or even cares, but I have the distinction of making the last out of the first game, which turned out to be the only game we lost in the World Series. So technically, I made the last out of the only game we lost the World Series. We won the next 4, so I have that distinction. But I had a great playoffs against the Braves, 7 hits and 13 at-bats. We had a wonderful a team back in those days, a great group of guys. And from that experience, I think that
all of a sudden, like I said, my life changed on October 16th, and be able to talk to wonderful fans like yourselves and be able to write about my experiences was very, very special to me. Anyway, that was the second book after the miracle, and the first book was The Magnificent Seasons. I don't know if anybody got that. That was about 1969, 1970 when the Jets won the Super Bowl in January. We won the World Series in October, and the New York Knicks won the NBA championship in May of '70. That book was interesting because, as it turned out, and nobody had ever won before, and here we have three teams in the same city winning in that period of time. But what's really important about that book is that you have to put that championship in perspective of what was going on in the city, the country, and the world at the time. I don't know, some of you all look pretty young to me, but somebody might have been around at that time and understand really what I'm saying is that we were in a world of turmoil back then. We're in a world that's upside down now, as everybody knows, but back in the late 60s with the war in Vietnam, the country was really in a tough situation. The city of New York was going under financially, socially, morally, spiritually, every which way you could do it. And we were able to make people feel better about their lives at a brief period of time, and they've passed that on from generation to generation. And I get people coming up to me, separate people who weren't even born, but people who were around at the time, just saying thank you. Thank you for making us feel like there was some light at the end of the tunnel. So those three books are very, very special. These three books are very, very special to me. I don't know what the fourth one's going to be about, but I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes thinking that, what am I going to write about next? But God willing, I'll be able to do that and keep writing. You know, last year was a tough year for me on a personal level. We lost 5 members of that '69 team, and there's about 13 or 14 guys left, and thankful for the nucleus that's still around, but a very difficult year for me. We lost Eddie Kranepool, Jerry Grody, Buddy Harrelson, Jack DeLauro, a pitcher on that team, and Jim McAndrew, a really good pitcher on that team. And so we cherish those memories, and that year will always be very special. I think the legacy of that team will live on forever, because the great thing about that team is that when we talk about it, it's not just about Tom Seaver, Jerry Koosman, Cleon Jones, Tommy Agee, but it's about Ed Charles and Wayne Garrett and Al Weiss and Kenny Boswell and, of course, Don Clendenin and Jerry Grody and Duffy Dyer and J.C. Morton. I mean, the names go on and on. Swoboda, you know, everybody knows those names, right? I don't have to keep mentioning those names. But for me, those memories will last forever, and I'm so thankful that I was part of that team. And I tell the guys who were not around when they were around, and even the guys around now, that no matter what you did in your career, your legacy will live on forever, because you are part of this incredible experience of time and memories. And when I go out and speak to groups of people who were around at the time, I get the feeling that I'm bringing back their youth. It makes me feel young, and I'm able to talk about times when they went to the ballpark and their fathers brought them, and then when they take their grandchildren, their children now, it brings back so many good memories. It's a different world now, as you know. The game is different now, and we can talk forever about the good, the bad, or whatever it might be, but baseball was different back then. It was a different thing, and so I miss those days, but the reality of it is we have those memories, and we're able to reminisce. And again, I cherish these moments when I'm able to talk to wonderful fans like yourself about that year and my life afterwards, and what transpired since those. And that was the basis for this book. When I decided to do another book, and I realized at the time when I said I'm going to write another book, I wasn't going to win a Pulitzer Prize for a novel. I wasn't going to write a love story or a murder mystery. I'm going to write about what I know, and what I know is baseball, and of course 1969 and the New York Mets. And I thought about it, and I got an idea from somebody said to me, you know, there's a book out that former President Dwight Eisenhower wrote way back in 1950s called At Ease, Stories I only tell my friends. And I looked at some of the excerpts from it, and I realized there are stories that I can expand on that have been told before. and there's things that haven't been told before, and that really was the basis for this book. And I hope as those of you who get it tonight or who've bought it before realize that some of the things that I say haven't been told before, but they're interesting in some way. And if I can make you smile and think about it and reminisce a little bit, then I feel like I've accomplished something. And that's really what I tried to do in this book. And hopefully you enjoy the stories and I can tell you right now, you're not going to find out about anybody who stayed out all night and got caught by the police and got arrested or anything like that. That's not what this book's going to be is about. But you might find some of the stuff interesting and some of the tug of wars that we had on and off the field, and I really hope again that I can make you smile a little bit and when you read this and get a chuckle and maybe reminisce a little bit about some of the things that you remember about that team or were told about that team, because it is very, very special. And I'm again so thankful that you came out tonight and were able to talk about it and reminisce a little bit, and it's great. So I'm going to take a few questions. I just want to introduce a couple people here, some friends of mine that some of you might know, and very special to me, very personal friends. One of them is my friend John Panisi there. John is a wonderful, wonderful sports artist that if you've seen some of his work, he's constantly on covers of magazines, covers of banquet stuff. He's made stuff for me and just wonderful. What do you call yourself, John? What would that be? An illustrator. All right. But great artist. So I'm sure over the time you'll see some John Panisi works, who is just a magnificent art illustrator. My friend Freddie Cambria. Freddie was a great pitcher with the Pittsburgh Pirates, who claims he got me out one night. Was it a day game or night game, Freddie? Against the Mets. Yeah, he got me out. He just wants to make sure he got me out. He pitched against Tom Seaver and won the game. And it was a great pitcher with the Pirates. A very typical story back in those days. Hurt his arm and pitched one year, 1970. Played with Roberto Clemente and Willie Stargell and a great cast of characters. I'd be remiss also if I didn't mention that I feel very lucky, because one of the questions I probably would have got tonight, but one of the questions that and thanks guys for coming tonight. They're very, very special friends. But one of the questions I always get is, don't you wish you were playing now, making all the money? And my first reaction is gosh, are you crazy? Of course I wish I was out there making. But there are two reasons why it doesn't bother me anymore. First and foremost, I wouldn't trade it for this World Series rig for all the money in the world. I'm one of back in those days, they didn't give them to everybody in the organization. If you were lucky to get one and you were in the front office, maybe a few people, but there was really 31 rings, 25 players and 6 coaches. And for me to have this, and it's not as gaudy as they make them now, but to me it's a treasure. And I'm very lucky to be one of those lucky people to have been on that team. And the second thing is, I was very lucky to play in an era that I think had the greatest conglomerate of players in the history of the game. We look at players today and they're bigger, stronger, faster, better conditioned, better trained, whatever it might be. But they don't play the game, I don't think, as good as we played back in the 60s and 70s. And they're measured a lot by the money they're making, which is fine. But that league that I played in, the National League and Major League Baseball, but that league in the National League, I mean, Mays, Aaron, Clemente, Stargell, McCovey, Gibson, Carlton, Koufax, Drysdale, Marichal, Perry, Tom Seaver, on and on and on the list goes for me. So be able to play with Frank Robinson, Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, my first year with Cincinnati before I got traded to the Mets. To me, to be part of that era is very, very special. So I have no regrets, and so it's a very special time for me. And again, I'm so happy to hear. I'm going to tell you one story that's in the book. you'll read about it a little bit more expanded, but it's about when I got traded to the Mets from the Cincinnati Reds. I was home in St. Louis. I grew up in St. Louis, and I just had a number of operations. I hurt my back really bad in 1967, and I got traded that winter over to the Mets. My first year was 1968. But anyway, I'm in St. Louis, and I got a call from the general manager of the Reds. His name was Bob Hausum. Doesn't mean anything to anybody. Probably never heard that name before, but he was the general manager of the Reds, and I just gotten home from the hospital, and I got the phone call. And the first time you get traded is always shocked. These are guys you came up with. Now, I came up with the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm friends, minor league friends with Pete Rose, Johnny Bench, Tommy Helms, Tommy Harper, all these young guys that went on, Tony Perez, went on to have great career. Tony's in the Hall of Fame. Rose, of course, we can argue about should or shouldn't be, but had the great career in baseball. And so once you get traded from a team, the first time, it's culture shock. You don't know what to say. So, but anyway, I get the call, and it's Mr. Hausum, and I said, I thought he's calling to see how I was feeling. So before he could say anything, I said, Mr. Hausum, thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate you checking up on me to see how I'm feeling. And he said, well, I'm glad you're feeling good because we just traded you this morning. So again, culture shock. You get traded, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm leaving all these friends. What am I going to do? And then I realized I better find out where I got traded. So I said to him, oh, by the way, where did you trade me? He said, we traded you to New York. And without thinking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Yankee Stadium, I could hit left-handed batter. I can break a bat and hit him out of right field 300 feet down the line. I said, who from the Yankees is going to call me? He said, well, no, it's the other team in New York. Now, if you played against that other team in New York and you didn't win 2 out of 3 games every series, it was a bad series. They were losing 100 games every year. I wasn't crazy about New York at the time. It was just, the Mets, it just did not seem appealing to me. It's a big league city, there's no doubt about it. It's a big league team, but just didn't seem right. I said, oh, no, you're kidding. He said, no, it's the Mets. I said, who from the Mets is going to call you? He said, Bing Devine. Now, he's the general manager of the Mets at the time. Here's the ironic thing of this whole thing. I knew Bing Devine because at one time he was the general manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. I grew up in St. Louis. I was always trying to sneak in to these tryout camps, and I was 14 years old, 15 years old, about this tall. He caught me every time. He told me, you're too young, come back in a couple years. So he knew me. And so they made the trade. He finally called me, and I get this on the phone with him, and he said, Art, we've been trying to make this trade. We need some left-handed power. You're going to love New York. This team is up and coming. We got a good team. And I'm thinking, is he talking about the same New York Met team that I've been playing against for the last 3 or 4 years? And but I didn't say that to him. He said, yeah, we're up and coming. We're going to bring you to New York. You're going to love it here, and et cetera, et cetera. I got off the phone with him, and I felt really a lot better. He made me feel a lot better. 2 days later, I picked up the paper in St. Louis and read where Bing Devine left the Mets, came back to the Cardinals as general manager. I was his last trade. He had just gotten through telling me how great it was in New York, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So separate of my kids and my family life, getting traded to the Mets was the best thing that ever happened to me. 2 years later, we won the World Series. I'm in front of wonderful people like yourself talking about this book that I just wrote. So for me, that's what's in the book, those kind of stories. I hope you really enjoy it, and thank you again for coming, and thank you again for buying the book.